Okay, welcome to the April edition of the CPO1 meeting. First of all, I want to make a personal, CPO-related announcement. I am not planning to run for chair in October. So, and it really is time for more folks to get involved with our steering committee, which never meets, and to help schedule our programs and, keep this ball rolling. So I plan to stay involved. I think Bruce plans to stay involved, but we're looking for some more folks to step up and help with the leadership. So let's start thinking about that now. I'm announcing it now so we have plenty of time to move forward. The main reason is because the Cedar Mill history stuff is really interesting to me and it's really taking off, and that needs me. And I think there's enough good people here in CPO1 that you can keep it going, and we'll get some new leadership. So with that, anybody have any announcements that you want to bring up or tell us about going on in the community? No? On the back table there is the development application for what we're referring to as the Payne property, which is between 119th and 113th, just north of Cornell around Reeves. And so if you want to take a look at that, it's there. And then tomorrow I'll be delivering it to the library. Does everybody know that there's a section in the Cedar Mill Community Library that has all sorts of CPO materials and development stuff? And they've got a wonderful map. And if they get a development application or some material that relates to properties, they mark it on the map. So if you're wondering about what's going on in your neighborhood, or down the road, or over there, it'll be on that map, and there will be materials that you can find and look up. We've worked for years to make this happen, so go use it, make it worth it. Yeah.
Actually, I did want to say something. Sorry, I've never been to one of these meetings before. I'm relatively new to the neighborhood.
Right.
I live on Sundown Way, off of Leahy Terrace and Leahy Road, and I just came to find out on Friday that Verizon Wireless is actually planning on putting a cell phone tower essentially on a utility pole just off of Leahy, right through the Esper portion of Leahy. And unfortunately for me, my house is, I would say, 70 feet from the back of my house to the base of the pole. And because of the topography there, my deck, I look out at the transformer that's on top of the pole, which was there when I bought the house. I mean, I knew about that, but I had no idea that there was plans to install another 25-foot tall pole with 6-foot tall antenna on top of this pole in a ring. And so, to my knowledge, the rules for use of the right-of-way pretty much give the utilities a free pass to do whatever they want in there.
Well, sitting right behind you is Melissa DeLyser, who's the communications person for Land Use and Transportation, and she may have some insight on this. We used to get applications and information on stuff like that, but I haven't seen
I haven't seen a development application come through.
So the job is permitted through Washington County Land Use and Transportation, the road permit office, but since it's a utility, it does not fall underneath the development code. Because
I'm not sure that that's accurate, but
Yeah, I'm not either, because we do have things regarding.
why don't we look
should take
into
this
it?
offline, yeah.
And we have an extremely full program tonight. I'm not shutting you down. I'm
Sure.
just saying we don't have time to dig into it right this moment. But it's exactly the kind of thing we like to look at here in the CPO. I'll back up a little bit in case anybody else is a first-timer. The CPO program was formed when Washington County created its land use laws, and goal 1 was citizen participation. And Washington County responded to the mandate for citizen participation in land use issues by creating the CPO system. each region of Washington County has its own CPO. We represent Cedar Hill, Cedar Mill, and Bonnie Slope. And sometimes I bring my map, but I didn't tonight. If you get the newsletter, you're in CPO1. If you don't get the newsletter and you signed up tonight, you will. It's a completely volunteer-run organization, but it's facilitated by the Washington County
Administration.
CAO, County Administration Office. I'll just call it the COW. And it used to be run by OSU Extension, but now it's run by the county office. They do some support services, but basically it's a volunteer organization. And people come to us and say, why are you doing this? We don't work for the county. Okay, so that was my announcement. Y'all are invited to the next opening of the Cedar Mill Museum, History Museum across the street, which will be April 21 and 22. They're redeveloping the Milltoner Center. It's finally happening after about 15 years of false starts. We also have information about a new development around the Peter Court area down at Barnes and Cedar Hills Boulevard in the Cedar Hill News. And now we'll have a brief talk from, let's go ahead with THPRD tonight. Your eyes.
Mix it up.
She's having me go first because I don't have much, but a group wants to present something to me. So really quickly for the Park District, registration is happening on the weekend of the 21st for summer programs. So it'll begin on Saturday, just as a reminder. Another thing that if you have anyone who's interested in summer employment, we are currently actively, all Park District facilities and all the departments are currently posting a ton of jobs right now. So if you've got teenagers or people home from college or you're looking for part-time work yourself, please check out our webpage. There's tons of jobs that are open and available. So we're always looking for great people. There is a spring native plant sale that the Twalton Hills Nature Park is hosting, which is always a great one to go and check out. It is Saturday, April 28th. I know we're short on time, so Joanna.
I'm Joanne Dunacek, and I am here on behalf of about 20 of my neighbors in the Lost Park area of Cedar Mill and their dog friends. And what this group is getting together to propose to THPRD is that we have off-leash hours at Lost Park. If you're here and already part of this conversation, please raise your hand so we can see that there's some interest here in the room. We do not want a dog park. There seems to be a little misunderstanding about that. So parking's not an issue because we're all going to walk there. And, hours would be posted so that, if people have small children who are frightened by big dogs, off-leash hours. Not a dog park. The Lost Park is not a large enough park to have a fenced-off area exclusively for dogs and have them get any exercise. But we would like to be able to exercise with our dogs. Owners would obviously have to still clean up after their dogs. They would have to monitor their dog's behavior. And all the normal things that you would expect. And we have made a few attempts to contact people at THPRD and really haven't gotten very far, except that we've noticed an increase in park patrol visits. But we'd like to know how to go forward. Who do we meet with? Who needs to approve this? How do we start that conversation so that now we've got some momentum on our side? How do we carry it forward? So if you can give us some guidance on that, that would be
Yes,
great.
I will take the information back. The dog parks are not in my realm, but I will definitely make sure that it gets to a couple of different people that are kind of overseeing, whether it's park maintenance staff and recreation staff. It's kind of combined on who touches dog parks.
Okay.
So I've got Mary's information, I've got your information. I will definitely make sure that I get it forwarded to the right person. And also I want to figure out who you've already kind of initially contacted and where we're hitting a roadblock. So I can kind of make sure that that gets addressed as well. So, but I will take the information that you have and I will get it. So you guys will either hear back from me or from somebody else. where we can go with that, so.
Okay,
So-
sounds great, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else for the Park District? Thank you.
Okay, Sheriff's Office. Thank you. We always have a visit from the Sheriff's Office, and it's a chance for them to tell us what they're up to, and a chance for citizens to ask about stuff they see going on in their neighborhood.
Just the thing, I'm Doreen Rivera, I'm your community outreach specialist for this area of the county. And so the next thing we have going on is Saturday, April 28th, right next door at Bales Marketplace. We will be having another one of the National Drug Turn-In events. So if you have prescription drugs, it could be pet meds, vitamins, anything like that that you want to get out of your house. We don't want you to flush it down the toilet because it gets in our waterways. So we're taking, you can bring as much as you have and just drop off. You can leave them in the containers, just throw them in there. It goes straight from our hands to the DEA and gets incinerated. So it's not going to be exposed anywhere. So yeah, clean out your cupboards, whatever, and we would be glad to take those. Yes?
I have a very specific question.
Yes.
I apologize for this very specific question. What about fentanyl patches? The reason I ask is because we were told that because they are so potent,
Yeah.
we have to put them on and off with gloves, and we were told specifically to flush them. And it's written that way on the packaging.
Well, we got some fentanyl up fish out there probably.
Really?
Troy, do you know anything about that? I have not heard that at
I've
all.
heard that before.
Because, you know, I probably wouldn't flush. I know it says on the packaging, I don't know who the
Well, our
company is,
physician
but.
specifically told us to do that because there's a concern that they can get touched by someone and they're highly dangerous.
So
Wow.
the used ones?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, presumably the unused ones are in packaging.
The unused are packaged, I'm talking about the
After
used
you
ones.
peel it off.
They stay on, it's for my elderly mother who has arthritis.
so,
And she gets the patch, she keeps it on 3 days, you take it off, you immediately flush it.
so I know that with other kind of prescription medications, they say if you don't have a place to turn them in, they tell you to crush them up and mix them with, like with cat litter or something. You mix it, oil, cat litter together, something so nobody's going to touch it. Nobody's going to get into that gunk. I don't know. I mean, I had not heard that. To me, that sounds kind of yikes. I don't know what that in waterways. Yes.
Retired plumber, don't flush it.
Okay. Yeah, if not.
I've been told that in two states now.
Wow. Yeah, not only the patch itself, but just the content of it. I don't like the idea of that getting out there, especially if it's that potent. So
I know.
I'd recommend if you have cat litter, if you have a cat, I've got one, mix it with their stuff or just buy cat litter. You can, or mix it with some gunky stuff. Like I said, it could be oil or anything. So somebody's not going to get a hold of that or do anything with it. And then, yeah, definitely maybe put it inside a plastic bag too or something. So it doesn't get into the soil. But yeah, I agree with him. I don't think I would want to be flushing it. Yeah, but I had not heard that before. Where's their sense of responsibility? Selling it, you probably get money from it. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. I didn't say that. Whoops. Turn that thing off. That was a poor joke.
That's okay.
And I'm recording
We
it
don't
too.
joke, it's okay.
Well, that's why I said don't. My thought is maybe if you're able to get a Sharps container and you put the used ones in, and then bring them to our turn-in day, something like that. Or
No, we don't
if
take
there's a-
sharps at the drug
No,
dealers.
but if you put the.
No, just the patches in the
Oh, I
containers,
see.
so nobody
Yeah.
would be able to touch them.
See, and that's a great idea.
That's a good
Just-
idea.
Just for background, Wisconsin wouldn't take that drug kickback.
Oh, okay. I don't think we've seen enough of them out here, or nobody asked.
I
Nobody
honestly haven't heard
has
enough
told
to.
us.
I mean, that's just.
Pass it.
And that's actually my idea, being a former garbage hauler. So.
No, I don't disagree with you, that's why
Yeah.
every time I go to one of these things, I ask.
But
it doesn't seem right to me.
It
that
doesn't,
when
does
you
it?
flush, and the packaging says flush, and
Yeah.
the doctors say flush, and the pharmacist says flush, anyway.
Oh my gosh, but at least we put it in a Ziploc baggie. That'd be a good idea, but yeah, so.
Anyway, I got a pamphlet, brochure, whatever you want to call it, printout. Some information about the drug turn-in on the 28th. I'm going to start them up here. Also got our standard printout for the month for what are we putting on there? Crashes and crimes and.
Oh, yeah,
cases
just for,
and
calls for service,
Calls for
things
service
like that,
information.
yeah.
I don't know how many have seen me here before. I've been here the last few months. I'm Dennis Strange. I'm with the Sheriff's Office. I patrol up here. You gotta forgive me. I've been fighting kind of an allergy thing all weekend, so I kind of, to me at least, I sound like a frog. But I've been with the Sheriff's Office a little over 12 years. I've patrolled up here in the Bethany area a few different times throughout our rotations. I've been up here now for about a year and a half after working other parts of the county and so on and so forth. As far as patrol goes, nothing on the top of my head stands out as far as what's been going on. I've been busy with a lot of DHS child abuse type calls, and that's kind of been the chunk of my last month. Other than standard, other little things here and there. Nothing major on the top of my head really pops out. So
Yeah, things seem to come in waves, and currently we haven't had much activity, so that's a good thing. Definitely a good thing. Any questions? Right.
Sorry.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Last night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, we heard sirens for about a half an hour. We live right on the top of 113. And my wife found out that there was some break-ins. Someone tried to break into a pickup truck, perhaps. Do you know anything about that?
I was not working. Today's my Monday, basically, but just what it sounds like, we were probably doing a canine track, and we keep sirens going to just show presence of law enforcement in the area, and so they more than likely they had a canine track trying to find somebody. That's just an educated guess.
Oh, you mean the sirens aren't there to keep the residents up?
It's usually called containment.
A long time.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's called containment, and they try to.
Unfortunately, it is noisy, but there's a tactical reason for that as well.
One thing I'll offer, I'll put some of my cards on the table, but anytime you have activity in your neighborhood and you want to know what the heck happened, shoot me an email or give me a call, and I can look it up and let you know what was going on.
Just call dispatch that night.
Yeah, you can do that.
Non-emergency number.
I come home.
Yeah, just say, hey, I'm in such and such neighborhood, I'm hearing sirens go, because neighborhood safety too, If we're chasing the guy, they're more than likely trying to get away. So if you've got that unlocked shed, that unlocked back door, they might find a hiding hole to try to hide from us, and, it's a safety factor for all the citizens too, so.
Is there an increase in pet raises?
I haven't heard of much, but in my experience, those kind of calls come during day shift hours because everybody gets ready to go to work. I don't start until basically noon. So shift one starts earlier in the day. That kind of stuff usually comes out because people are coming out, getting in their cars, getting ready to go to work, 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. But again, I haven't heard anything specific. And I'll be honest with you, they're not break-ins, they're just unlocked cars. You still have unlawful entry of the motor vehicle, but I'm not seeing or hearing anything specific about cars getting broken into.
We're not.
We are having the theft from vehicle because things are left unlocked.
I see some TDF&R trucks here too, so do one of you guys want to come up? I think we have.
Pass the baton. Got the hook.
I heard there was a fire on the Yankee campus today. Did you?
So we did not respond to that.
Huh. They've got their own.
So I know you guys have a big agenda tonight, so I am just, my goal is just to cover a couple brief things, and more importantly, answer any questions that you might have. So I see a lot of new faces and some faces that I know. For those who don't know me, my name is Troy Spiesland. I'm the captain of Fire Station 60 up the road by the French-American School. So not only a third of my life do I spend at the fire station in CPO1, but I also live in CPO1 at the old Mortensen farm over by our other fire station, 68. So I kind of have a vested interest in our community here. Up until recently, your representative for TDF&R may or may not have shown up. We get busy sometimes, and so we made a change, and we now have assignments, really. So you will see myself or one of the other two shifts. So your assigned fire station is Station 60, and I just kind of want to blend that and solidify that over the next few months, that if you have any questions or concerns, kind of like for the sheriffs, you go to Doreen, that you can reach out to me or any of the on-duty officers at Fire Station 60. The next thing I wanted to touch base on was here in the last couple of weeks, we implemented a multi-regional computer-aided dispatch program for our 911 center. which was a big deal because it had been over 10 years since it had been done. It is extremely outdated. Unfortunately, it costs a lot of money. So with a lot of regional effort, we were able to solidify and consolidate 3 dispatch centers: Columbia County, Washington County, Clackamas County. All can be operated on one system, which, especially nowadays with cell phones, people call in, they might not be a lot of landlines, and so getting to the right end result dispatcher has been increasingly problematic. So this allows anybody to answer the call and ship it out, and it gets there. And then the second biggest component to this system that you're receiving as citizens is a component of automatic vehicle location, especially on the fire side, the fire and medical side, which has not been. So in the past, resources have been dispatched. If you were to call, the resource that would have been dispatched would have been based on the assumption that our fire engine was up at that fire station and the fire station was sitting over at Butner Road. But as you probably notice, you hear sirens and you see us all around town, we're not necessarily always there. We now have the ability, you will be getting the closest unit, period, which is a huge fundamental change.
Passed a big levy a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So we're all helping.
So part of that came from a levy on the communication side, and part of that was some savings that had been forecasted for the computer dispatch side. So that's kind of a big deal that I wanted to bring up. And the last thing I wanted to revisit, the last time I was here a couple months ago, I brought forth the idea of Pulse Point app. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Just a couple hands, a few hands. So we are preaching continuously about the Pulse Point app. It's called Pulse Point. One of the things that we have, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. Lieutenant Stamps has been doing the same. 20 years ago, we would go on a cardiac arrest victim, and the chance of somebody surviving and walking out of the hospital was very slim. It was monumental if somebody did that. Last year, I think we had 42 plus in our fire district alone. So that came from a whole combination of things, of fast, efficient CPR. We now work with the police departments across our region. They get dispatched on cardiac arrest. They bring AEDs in the backs of their cars. You probably have seen these all over, public places. The other arm that we're hoping is that you become our citizen responders. That you are willing to install an app on your phone, tracks your GPS, and when Washington County has somebody call in for a cardiac arrest, it notifies all phones within a short geographic area that you can help and go do CPR. And one of the changes with that, not only with our technology of doing that, but we can also, it used to be mouth-to-mouth, CPR. You probably took a CPR class 10 years ago, you were 2 years ago. How many breaths, how many compressions, that's all changed. So if you can remember hard and fast, if you can find somebody's chest, the center of the chest, and if you can push hard and fast, you can do quality CPR to buy us time, to buy that person's life, till we get there with electricity. Okay? So a lot of questions were, what is this thing? So that's why I wanted to actually bring one, because a lot of times you see them in cases, nobody really opened them up. So I just wanted to briefly, that's what an
We've only got
AED
1 minute.
is. It's as simple as following the 1, 2, 3 instructions. It can't hurt anybody. It's going to diagnose and deliver shock if it needs to. It's as simple as that. So if somebody collapses, CPR, 911, find a defibrillator. As well as that, there's another arm of the Pulse Point app, and all the firefighters that reside in TVFNR. So we have 400 plus firefighters that reside that are firefighters. A large majority reside in TVFNR, like myself. We're called verified responders. We all have these through a grant from the manufacturer, Philips, that said, hey, we value the ability to get these on scene so much that you might even see an off-duty firefighter get notified. Half a mile, if a cardiac arrest victim comes in, I get notified day, 24 hours a day. So another added program that is throwing all kinds of multiple layers to help survivability of cardiac arrest. Question?
A person has all the symptoms of cardiac arrest, but they don't have it. Will that machine tell you that it's not
Yep.
cardiac?
Yep. So
Excellent.
this machine is going to read that heart rhythm and know if it's a life-threatening rhythm that needs electricity and delivers it.
Because a case of a burst artery coming out of the heart has all the symptoms of a heart attack, but it isn't.
Yep. Yep. So it's super smart. Don't fear it. Use it. Question.
How do you get the app?
It's on the App Store. Pulse Point.
P-O-L-S-E?
No, Pulse. Pulse Point. So PULSEPOINT. Alrighty. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have our Metro President candidates? I know we have one. Maybe I have one. Go ahead. We'll just ask you to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I have one brief question, and then we can take some questions.
And how long do you want me to?
Well, we got you until 8 o'clock, so of course we can move along more swiftly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everybody. How are you all doing tonight?
Better?
Do I hear you?
Better.
How are you doing tonight? Hey, good? Good. Well, I'm Lynne Peterson, and I'm running for Metro Council President because somebody should be Madam President, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Metro, many of you know what Metro does. Raise your hand if you've heard of Metro. We got a bunch that haven't. You are very lucky. You have moved to a state and a region that has the only elected regional government in the entire country. And that is because we thought ahead to be able to have a regional government that would coordinate all of our cities in the 3 counties, Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington, to be able to look into the future for our land use planning and transportation planning and manage the urban growth boundary, as well as buy land for the future for a regional park system, as well as dispose of all of your waste. So, very interesting discussion. And also run the Oregon Zoo, which 94% of you love. Everything else is a little controversial. And then the Expo Center and the Convention Center. So everything regional that nobody thought that, it's not just the Portland Zoo, it's the regional zoo, right?
Right.
So that's what Metro does in a nutshell.
Doesn't include Max too?
So Max and all of the bus system is TriMet. And TriMet is a separate special district with a payroll tax that runs the transit system. So Metro looks forward and does the planning, but doesn't actually own any of the roads or the buses or the light rail. So they don't own those assets. What they own in assets are parks. They own the waste facility collection centers. So they own things like that, but not the actual roads and transit. So I am a transportation, highway design, and construction engineer by training. I started my career at the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. We moved out here in 1993 because I had questions. I had questions about how you go about doing transportation projects that actually benefit communities, that don't plow over them, don't roll over them, and don't plow our farmland under. So when I got here, I was amazed at the Oregon Land Use Planning Program that we adopted in 1973, which you alluded to, which created the goals of the program. The first one is citizen involvement. So I think it became baked into my DNA at this point after 24 years. The Oregon Land Use Planning Program is a big part of what I have done. Whoa, plant now. It's a lot of what I've done for a living, and that is, my entire career has been about how to build strong communities that are healthy, safe, and economically vibrant. And so I want to be able to do that for the entire region. I started my career here working for both Metro and TriMet, so I had a regional approach, eventually getting elected to Lake Oswego City Council. Clackamas County Commission, became the first elected chair of Clackamas County, following in the footsteps of Washington County. There went to 5 commissioners before Clackamas County did, and Multnomah before Washington County. So I became the first elected chair and worked on these issues. Then worked for Governor Kitzhaber as a senior transportation policy advisor for 2 years, and then Governor Inslee called for my dream job and asked if I would run the Department of Transportation for the state of Washington, which I did for 3 years, and have come back and I'm consulting nationwide now. But more importantly, taking those 3 years out and working for Governor Inslee not only solidified my work for communities and commitment for communities, but also my commitment to Oregon. And making sure that as this place grows, because as we have learned in the past, Oregon has really grown incrementally. So we've made investments incrementally. But are we growing incrementally anymore? No, there are 90 people a day that are moving here. The comments from the second row are, and that's actually down from 112 a day. So we're slowing down a bit. But 90 people a day, and with the unaffordability of this region, no matter where I go in this region, every single mayor, every single community is talking about how unaffordable things are getting for the people who live here. And that's pushing a lot of people out. So 500 new single-family home permits were just granted in Scappoose this year. Scappoose, right? Newburgh, Dundee are growing. Canby, Molalla are growing. Cascade Locks has seen 200 single-family permits issued. Little Cascade Locks. So what's happening is that a lot of the folks that want to live in the region, that work in the region, that have services that they need in the region are being pushed out. So our congestion levels between the new people moving in and the folks that are pushed out have gone up 25% between 2015 and 2017. So when you feel like it's taking longer, statistically I can tell you, you're not imagining anything, it's real. So what I want to do is basically get in to Metro Council and as president and work on making sure that this region continues to hold to the values that we hold dear, keeping us clean in terms of our air and our water, making sure that it's green in terms of moving a clean economy and the workforce forward, making sure it's affordable, which means that we're going to have to really think about how we do private-public partnerships with a lot of the developers to get some workforce housing back in this region, and also on transportation, and make sure that we are providing equitable transport for everybody in this region, because there are a lot of isolated communities in this region. And then make sure it's equitable. And specifically, I don't mean geographically equitable, I mean that we have communities of color in this community, in this region, that have not seen any investment at all for a very long time, so we really need to work on that. So that's why I'm running. We have a lot to do, and I'm going to ask that you guys are going to be a partner as we go along and make some really big plans. Metro is looking at how to put an affordable housing ballot measure out for the entire region this fall. It's going to take a lot of education, because how are we going to do that? What is the priority? They're working on that right now. How much? How do you actually tax on that equitably? There's a lot of conversation going on right now, and it will be good to have that this fall, to have that conversation. Also, in 2020, the region has said that they want to go out for a transportation package to be able to provide more mobility and accessibility as affordably as we can for the region. So we're going to have more conversation about that. So there's a lot of things coming up on the agenda for this region in order to keep it moving, but my commitment to you is that, one, I will make sure that I'm here and engaged with you in your community. I'm not going to ask you to come out to Metro all the time. It's a great place, but it's kind of far away. It kind of takes a long way to get there. But also that your thoughts, your ideas are going to drive both of those issues. So that is my commitment to you. My other commitment is that we will create performance metrics for Metro, which we don't have right now. We have some regional things that we're trying to achieve, but we've never put performance metrics in them to be able to track them. And we should be having conversations about that trend analysis. And the third commitment I'm going to make to you is that I'm very invested in making sure that our small businesses and minority contractors in this region are actually getting the work, and it's not going to folks out of state. So that's a big part of where we're going, whether it's private-public development on the housing side or transportation. We need to make sure that we're actually growing jobs here, not for other communities. So I will stop there because it's a big topic, Metro, between the recycling and the parks and the zoo. So thank you for your apt attention, and I don't want to hold you here all night.
Question or two?
I have, one of the issues that we've worked on in CPO1, everybody gets a chance, but has been what we're calling inter-county commuting.
Yeah.
A great many of our folks live over here but work in Portland. And a great many of our folks live in areas that are totally unserved by TriMet.
Right,
And the Sunset Transit Center has no parking.
right.
We asked and asked and asked for Metro to get involved in some way, and all we were ever told is that the jurisdictions need to work together. Washington County has tried to work with Portland streets and been rebuffed at every turn.
Right.
And so, would you
So
be-
there's the bus issue, and there's also the interconnects between Washington County and Multnomah County.
So I have an answer.
Right,
For you.
the freeways clog,
Yep.
there's a couple of roads that lead out of here over into Portland, and they're clogged, and Portland says, if we build it, you'll just drive on it. And so we're wondering, as our Metro president, if you would be more inclined to get in there and help us solve these problems.
So, let's just start with every jurisdiction is unique, right? And your needs are going to be different than another community's needs. But the thing that binds us together is that while the state may own a road, or the county may own a road, or the city may own a road, we have specific corridors in this region that are really our lifelines.
Right.
And when we go to do transportation project implementation throughout the United States, we only focus on specific projects. And when we focus on those specific projects, we'll get to your question. I just don't want you to get tired. We don't actually solve a problem. We mask the problem at an intersection, right? Because there may be too many people at that intersection in that 15-minute peak or that 30-minute peak, but we don't actually solve the mobility and accessibility for our citizens along the corridors. So what I'm proposing when we look to the future for this 2020 Transportation Ballot Initiative, and you're never going to forget my amazing branding genius scheme that I have, is the 2020-20 plan. Right? You're not going to forget that in 2020. It all becomes in focus, right? 2020.
Right.
So 20 corridors for $20 billion over 20 years. And that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But we have a $20 billion need just in all of our infrastructure, let alone transportation. So when you start to think about TV highway stem to stern, not a project on TV highway for the next 20 years, but how do we actually move people? You can talk about the transit system, right? You can talk about how you're going to move that bus, but you can also talk about the signal progression needed to move more people through that corridor, not more vehicles. Because if you just build a system for vehicles, you can't move a whole lot of people because there's only one person in each car, right?
But
So
the
you have to
county
serve.
has allowed us to build subdivisions in the hills that the buses can't serve. Are these people supposed to work from home?
So that comes to a last mile issue, and that's where a lot of this needs to focus, is on the corridors. How do you get access to the corridors? So
Right.
things are happening right now, even in Metro. Uber and Lyft, specifically Uber, is looking at doing some last mile demonstration projects just to get to the end of the light rail station. So it's a demonstration, but what they're looking to do is a free or reduced ride. I can't remember. They'll be announcing it soon. So if you call an Uber and you say, I want to get to the last station out at the end of the light rail line in Hillsborough, right, as their demonstration, they're going to give you a free or reduced ride to see if what's that demand?
We had the Cedar Mill shuttle here
Yeah,
for
I
several
remember
years,
that.
and it worked great.
Yeah.
And the TriMet unions shut it down.
So, I remember that. The other thing that I'd like to bring back is there was a conversation a long time ago, just as I was coming into TriMet around 2000, and it was called it was a community transit focused plan. I'd like Metro to take that up and work to see, it kind of gets to that last mile. How do you hook into these major arterials, right? Yeah. So,
Okay, I don't want to monopolize the conversation.
but here, let me just also give you a little bit of vision on these
Okay.
corridors. Because this is my big thing and this is what I do for a living. But what we'll be able to do if we are able to raise investment is we'll be able to electrify the TriMet fleet within those corridors, thereby reducing emissions because those are all diesel buses, right? The other thing we'll be able to do is actually put emissions monitoring devices in all those corridors because right now there are only 3 monitoring devices for the entire region about our clean air. That's why they didn't pick up on what was going on with the bullseye glass, right? Because it was an isolated pocket of a neighborhood that was being affected, and it wasn't anywhere near one of the emissions monitoring devices. So I'd like to make sure that all of our communities have clean air, and that we pick up on those trends. So there's some things that we can do to embed this, as well as making sure that the people who build out that system are from here. That our people are getting jobs, that our people are getting the work and getting the contracting. So, yeah. And then we're going to come back up to you because you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Is Metro involved in the, you talked about congestion issues and such, is Metro involved in the decision-making process to expand the urban growth boundary?
Yes, that is the decision that Metro makes. That's one of the bigger decisions that they make is when and where and how to move the urban growth boundary. And we have one of your Washington County commissioners who is a good friend, and I think what's important is that Metro has started a conversation in a little different way this time, and said if a city wants to move the urban growth boundary, you can make an application, and if we need the land, we'll go and talk to you about that, rather than just moving the urban growth boundary around a jurisdiction that didn't really want it. Oh. Yes, your question.
Could you talk a little bit about the Northwest Passage?
So back in 1793.
No, this is not a fun thing.
I know. There's a conversation, and I'm sure some of you have heard about, it's basically a proposal to build a brand new freeway to the north that would come on through the industrial district on the northeast and then come into I-5 at the base of the Columbia River crossing, which we still have not built. I think I've seen estimates of $20 billion for that project. So if we were to raise $20 billion and spend it on one project,
Wait,
we would have an issue, right?
it won't cost the taxpayers one dime, and I've talked to a member of the legislature, and you haven't studied it, apparently. It starts in Wilsonville, goes to Forest Grove, goes through Helvetia, down to the river, and either a tunnel or a bridge, and it's paid by the people that use it. So those who have an ideological objection to it, just don't use it. Because the taxpayers are not paying for it. The investors worldwide will get a chance to.
Actually, I've worked on this topic for 30 years, so I totally understand what we're talking about, and I appreciate that. And you're obviously very emotionally attached to this idea, so I would love to talk to you about it later. I think the issue, though, for me is how many communities can we serve, how many people can we serve, and how do we do cost-effective projects so that we can serve more? Because there's no way, as a public servant, that I want to ever have to look at anybody and say, no, you can't have your safety project. No, you can't have an affordable, accessible transportation system. So we want to make sure it's cost-effective for everybody and doesn't leave any community more isolated. There are parts of this region that are very isolated, and it takes people much too long to be able to get to work and get their kids to daycare. So.
There was a proposal to replace much of the Portland Zoo Railway with a bicycle trail in Washington Park. What's your position on that?
I hadn't heard that one. So I know that one of the Metro Council candidates for District 4 actually wants to start up the zoo train again. So that's what I've heard. I have no problem with having a conversation of what to do with the existing railway. But I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of other opportunities as well, and so we have to look at all of them. I'm open to having the conversation though.
Simple question.
Yeah.
Regarding the 90 people that move here daily, what's the demographic?
Do I know all their names?
And why they move here too?
You know, I think we know that statistics more from when people turn in their driver's license, when they get a new driver's license, and the rate of change. So I don't think we know the demographics on that.
I mean, is it the 20-somethings, the 30-somethings, or?
You know, yeah, I'll see what I can find out,
And
but
maybe
it's
if we
probably
work,
past, it's
yeah.
probably more like we would be able to know that from 2015, 2016, rather than what's happening right now, what happened yesterday, right? But I think that they appear to be not fazed by the high prices, and they're really buying up a lot of what we would consider the affordable housing because they have no other options, and then those folks are moving out, right? There's a domino effect that's going on in the region. Yeah.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about the North Tualatin Park project. It's a metro park.
So I'm not at Metro right now, so I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to get down into the specifics of a specific park
There's some controversy
project.
about whether to
Tell me.
give us public access to it or keep it as pristine landscape. And there's supposed to be an entrance not far from where the Skyline Grange is, up on Skyline.
Okay.
I was just reading something about it the other day, that there's parkland, addition to Forest Park, next to Forest Park, another chunk, and it's kind of spread out in 3 parcels along the crest of the Tualatin Hills. And we've definitely been feeling that everybody else has metro parks and we don't. And that's about as close as we're getting. So I think those of us who live around here would like to see it have some public access.
I think Metro struggles over the years of buying up the land and then providing the access because when they started the program, it was about basically preserving the land, right, and preserving special places before they got developed. And so as the program has gone along, access to the land has become the next issue. So how do you provide not just the parking and the facilities, but the maintenance of any trail system that goes in, and what other amenities would folks like in that area? And so I think, Nature in the Neighborhood grants, those types of things have been given out to be able to help. If there's a community that wants to move that forward, then they've been working with them.
Well, we could still, since we don't have the other candidate, we could steal a few minutes from this and move on to our next topic, unless you have some closing remarks.
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for showing up.
I was just going to say, there's a very special quote to me from Governor Tom McCall, and some of you know it, and some of you may have heard it before, but it's, heroes are not giant statues framed against a red sky. They are people who say, this is my community, and it's my responsibility to make it better. And so thank you for being our heroes.
Okay, we wedged another topic into the meeting tonight because the Washington County District Attorney race has been heating up lately. I don't believe that our other candidate who is reputedly being funded by out-of-state folks as part of a national ACLU effort to, liberalize the district attorney job, something to that effect. But since we don't have the opponent, let's hear from Kevin.
I'm Bracken McKeon. I'm here for Kevin tonight. Thank you.
Oh, Brett.
Bracken, yes.
Bracken.
But I'm here for Kevin.
All right.
So
I thought you were.
this is Kevin.
That's Kevin.
This is Kevin right here, and I hope you all take one of these. Kevin, before Kevin's opponent recently filed the last day of the deadline, Kevin had promised his young girl that he'd attend her piano recital, and rather than break his daughter's heart tonight, he decided to send me instead. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the Washington County DA's office and exactly what your district attorney does. And then I want to talk about why you should vote for Kevin. So, anytime there's a misdemeanor or felony crime that happens in Washington County, that is reviewed and prosecuted by our office. And we have 41 attorneys that work for the Washington County DA's office, and we review roughly 13,000 to 14,000 cases annually. Of those, we end up deciding that a certain amount can't be charged because they can't be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, or for other reasons they shouldn't be charged. There's about 8,000 cases that we do charge. So we have 41 attorneys, we have 115 people that work in the office, and we have a roughly $15 million annual budget for the DA's office. The primary obligation of the district attorney is to ensure the safety of the community and to seek justice. And the district attorney is a nonpartisan position. It's not supposed to be a political position. Decisions are supposed to be made free of those outside influences in order to, like I said, seek justice. And justice is really for the victim. Justice is for the community. And justice is for the defendant. So that's what the responsibilities of the district attorney are. How many people like living in Washington County that are here? I see a couple that don't. Okay.
Well, better than the city of Beaverton.
Or anywhere in Washington County, right? I mean, Washington County encompasses Beaverton, Hillsborough, Forest Grove, Tualatin, Sherwood, Cornelius, Banks, North Plains. It's a big county. So I was watching the news Saturday night, and I was watching a Coin 6 story. And the Coin 6 story was about people that were fed up with crime in Portland. They were fed up with the car break-ins, the needles, the vandalism. And I was thinking about how grateful I am to raise my family in Washington County. When I left, I live over here. My wife and our two boys live over here in Bethany, in Ann Arbor neighborhood. And when I walked out of the driveway, there were two girls on the sidewalk selling lemonade. And my boys can go to the park and they can play. And they can play because it's safe. And it's safe in large part because of the efforts of the district attorney's office. So I talked about safety. I also wanted to talk about seeking justice and what that means. Okay? And then I'm going to talk about why you absolutely should vote for Kevin Barton and not his opponent in this race. And I'm glad to see his opponent showed up.
Right.
So, seeking justice. I talked to Bruce about this today, and it just seems like since we have a little bit more time, it's an appropriate story to tell. In 2012, there was a shooting in Forest Grove, and Luis Guzman was shot and killed. And it took about a year before the Washington County Major Crimes Team was able to put that case together. And the reason they ultimately were able to put that case together is because a young boy who was now 16 made a call to a gang detective. And he said, I haven't been able to sleep for the last 11 months. I've been having nightmares, I can't concentrate, and I have to tell you what happened. And so he arranged to meet the detectives away from his neighborhood so nobody would see him talking to them. And he explained how the night of the murder, he'd gotten into a van with 3 other gangsters. And they'd gone out to Forest Grove, and the gangsters were a lot older than him. One was in his 30s, one was in his 20s, and one was a very, very old 19. And he explained how when they got out to Forest Grove, the decision was made that another person in the car, Niaz, was going to shoot Luis Guzman and was going to kill him. But they told Andrew, they told this, who was then 15, he turned 15 7 weeks before. They told Andrew that he was going to go up and knock on the door to get Luis to come outside. And Andrew did. He went and knocked on the door, and he said, "Is RJ there?" RJ was the victim's son, who was about the same age as Andrew. And he did that so that the victim would come outside. When the victim came outside, Niaz shot him 4 times and killed him. They ran back to the van, and when they got back in the van, Niaz was laughing about the way that the victim was making noises as he was dying. And as Andrew explained this, he said that he wanted to make this right. And he came out to court, he testified before the grand jury, and I learned a little bit more about Andrew. What I learned was, his name's Andrew Hernandez. He was originally from Mexico. He lived with his mom, who didn't speak any English, in an apartment in Portland, along with his 3 younger brothers and sisters. His dad had left the family. And he started asking me questions that were really legal questions, and I explained to him, "Hey, I'm the prosecutor here. I really shouldn't answer those for you. You need to get those answers from somebody else." So I went to the presiding judge, who appointed a defense attorney for him. And that defense attorney agreed to work with Andrew for free and spent the next 1.5 years mentoring him and answering his questions. When the time came to go to trial, Andrew's family was receiving threats. We ended up moving them to a hotel and provided them security to get into court every day. And Andrew stood there and he looked Niaz in the eye and he explained what Niaz had done and how it happened. Andrew and his defense attorney had never asked me what was going to happen to Andrew because, see, under Oregon law, if someone aids and abets in the commission of the crime, they are responsible for that crime as if they did it themselves. So Andrew was 15. He could be tried as an adult for murder. Several months later, and over the course of the year, I should tell you that I learned that Andrew actually was quite a remarkable kid at this point. He'd gotten out of the gang life. He was a sophomore at Wilson High School. And he was playing varsity soccer, and he was taking 3 AP courses. And he was on the honors roll. And so several months later, close to a year later after the trial, I called up Tom Collins, who was the attorney for Andrew, and I said, "Hey, let's go up and let's have lunch with Andrew and let's talk about his case." And we went to the McMenamins right across from Wilson. We went there and sat down, and I explained to Andrew and Tom Collins, I said, "Here's the deal. Luis is dead. That's murder. You aided and abetted in that crime, and the law says that you could be charged with murder in this case." And I've wrestled for it was close to 2 years at this point, trying to figure out what I should do with you. And I've watched you get out of the gang. You came in and did the right thing in court. You are getting close to a 4.0 in high school, taking advanced placement classes. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to graduate from high school. I want you to go to college. I want you to live a life that honors the death. I want you to live a life that can make something for your mom and make something for your 3 brothers and sisters. And I want you to stay clear of the gangs for the rest of your life. And if you do that, I'm never going to charge you with a single crime. But here's the thing, Andrew, there's no statute of limitations on murder. And if you decide that you, down the road, want to become more gang involved and get back in that lifestyle and do things that endanger the safety of the community, you are someone that could be charged. But I want to give you that chance. I want to believe in you. Andrew graduated from high school. Andrew is now a junior at Portland State, and he has close to a 4.0. So justice means something different in different cases. Justice is what we try to do at the DA's office every day. And I'm proud that, and remember, I'm not running, this is for Kevin Barton. I'm proud that Kevin Barton, who's our chief deputy, has the support of Commissioner Malinowski, who's here, has the support of every commissioner in Washington County, has the support of every mayor in Washington County, has the support of every police chief in Washington County, has the support of every police officers association in Washington County. Because Kevin has lived here and worked here. And unfortunately, Kevin's opponent has not. Kevin's opponent moved to Washington County and has practiced law here for about 3 years. Kevin's opponent has tried 2 cases in Washington County Circuit Court. 2 cases. Kevin's opponent has never tried a murder case and never tried to a jury a Measure 11 crime, which is a violent felony. Yet he wants to run an office of 115 people with 41 attorneys. So, when you think about voting and you educate yourself on the issues, and you realize the reason Kevin has the support, you realize the safety that we have here in Washington County, I ask you to consider voting for Kevin Barton. And we began to hear, starting last fall and into the winter, that there were out-of-state groups that were attempting to recruit a candidate to run against Kevin. We know of at least a dozen attorneys that were asked directly. Many of those attorneys said, no, I'm supporting Kevin. Some of them even donated financially to Kevin. And on the last day, there was one candidate who said yes. He was promised outside money. He is being given outside money. He is funded by out-of-state interests, not Washington County interest. So I want the candidates and their qualifications, and I ask you to vote for Kevin. I think Bruce signaled that we're about out of time for me, and what I'm happening is...
Go ahead and, since Max has arrived, we're going to go ahead and give him a chance to introduce himself.
Okay.
And then we'll have
questions. Okay,
for
sounds
both
great.
of you.
Thank
So,
you.
come on up.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Max Wall, running for District Attorney. It's always interesting to hear what latest supposed facts my opponents have turned up about me. Actually, I've lived in Washington County for 8 years. I lived in North Wilsonville on the edge of Washington County for 3 years, 2 years in southeast Portland with my wife, and then we moved to Washington County, and we've been here for 5 years. I've lived and worked here prior to moving to Washington County, and while I was in Washington County for 8+ years, I worked as a deputy district attorney in Polk County, Oregon. It was a smaller office than Washington County, but part of the benefit of being in that smaller office is that you don't really have the luxury of specialization. I had to handle every type of case that came into that office, and during my time there, I also was the juvenile delinquency and dependency deputy, meaning that I worked with the juvenile department for crimes committed by youth. I also worked with DHS, protecting children and families and helping to reunite them and make sure that they were safe. I also handled in adult court everything from the smallest misdemeanor to the largest felonies. And I think it's also rather interesting that my opponent wants to claim that I have never tried a felony jury trial, when anybody with Google can see that that's a lie. If you want to look up Max Wall, Polk County District Attorney, you will see, we didn't get a lot of press in Polk County, but you will see articles about Maria Moss, who I tried to a felony jury trial for beating and starving her children for the better part of a year. You can read about Samuel Jaycox, who I convicted after jury trial of felony sex crimes against children. You can read about Matthew Hale, who bit the top of his girlfriend's ear off, and I had no problem sending him to prison. So I don't think the question should be whether or not I'm going to be tough on crime, but I think the question should be if we as a community are going to be tough and smart on crime. I believe that we can do things better than we have been. I'm a big proponent of treatment courts. I have no problem at all sending violent offenders to prison. I've done that many times. But I think for nonviolent offenders who want to be accountable for their actions, we have alternatives, and those alternatives can work. I was the prosecutor for drug court for several years. I saw people who I thought I was going to see forever change their lives through having an intensive supervision where they accepted responsibility and they got treatment and help. And I think that we can do that better in this county than we have been right now. We have a mental health court that started here. I think it needs to be expanded, and it also needs a secure source of funding, which it doesn't have right now. And we also have many veterans in the community, many of which I work in my current work doing defense. And I think that we could stand to have a veterans court here too. So those who have served us, if they come back with trauma or PTSD, are able to have access to services rather than end up in jail. Really, as I said, I think that it's important that we have, after 20 years under the same leadership, someone able to come in and take a look around and point out maybe some things we could be doing better. I think a pair of fresh eyes would serve us well, and I think that's who I am. I have been a defense attorney the past 5 years, working in Multnomah, Washington County. I handle cases in Beaverton Municipal as well. I do a lot of conflict work, and so the cases I do in Washington County tend to be conflict cases, but about 99% of the work I do is public defense. I've spent my whole career as a public servant, both in a district attorney's office and doing defense. I feel that I'm a very well-rounded candidate. I've helped victims and protected victims and worked with the law enforcement agencies all the way up to the ATF and FBI. And I also have experience defending defendants' rights, holding police accountable if they misuse their power. If we want to talk about money, you'll note that if you go to our respective pages on Orstar, you'll see that my opponent and I have roughly 100 individual donations. He's been running for 6 months, I've been running for 4 weeks. There is a hunger in the community, I think, to talk about reforms that we could make, ways we could be doing this better. And when you go there, you'll see that my donations, some of them aren't from around the country because I have family and friends around the country. I would hope my opponent also has family and friends around the country supporting this race. And frankly, in elections, when you support someone's viewpoint or their values or their philosophy of criminal justice, you're going to support them, whether through financial support, whether you vote for them, whether you volunteer to help their campaign. And so we do have people that are supporting my viewpoint, supporting the reforms I want to make, donating to my campaign. And just as my opponent does, his largest contributors are the Sheriff's Association and the police departments. And frankly, those are people that have an interest in the status quo continuing and in not having any changes that might help us have a more effective and more effectively run district attorney's office. This office in this county received $8 million over the past 5 years from our legislature of our tax dollars for justice reinvestment. What that means is they are supposed to use this money as a way to reduce incarceration rates, whether at prison or jail. And we have a jail that is overcrowded, it's full, and we have forced releases happening. We have a little more right now happening because there is a remodel going on, but they were going on before that remodel, and they're going to go on after that remodel. And what this says to me is that we could be doing a better job in charging decisions and deciding how we handle cases. I have many clients who, for lack of $50, are stuck at the jail, and then they are unable to work. They lose their job, they lose their housing, and their lives spiral out of control. I feel like we could be making smarter choices, and I want to bring some fresh perspectives to the district attorney's office. I hope that you'll learn more about both of the candidacies, and I hope that I can earn your support in this race. Thank you.
Thank you. If both candidates want to come up, we'll take questions. The district attorney's office is a little obscure. I think people don't pay an awful lot of attention to that as an elected office. Bruce, do you want to talk a little bit briefly about what the DA does? I mean, we'll hear it from both of these guys.
I think we have a pretty good idea there. To me, the whole subject of prosecution is one in which the greater the power that you have, the more restraint and deliberateness one needs to use with it. And so, while you were talking about some reforms, and we do have a drug court, we do have a mental health court, building on that, I'd like to ask both of you, what kinds of reform, what would you see as building on the infrastructure that we have now, where would you like to go from there?
You know, one thing I'd really like to do is first make sure that we either can get some funding at the state or maybe national level or through grants for mental health court. Right now there isn't a secure source of funding, and I'd like to make sure that we're able to expand and utilize that program. A lot of the people I deal with in criminal defense have a mental health problem that's underlying their activity. And this is a way to be able to have them be able to be both monitored and held accountable and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. And this is, the reason I'm a big proponent of treatment courts is I feel like this is how you cure the disease rather than just treat the symptom. It's easy to just put somebody in jail. That's easier than having to go through supervision, but it's also the most expensive thing we can do. It's roughly $40,000 a year for someone to be held in our jail. And when you multiply that by how many people are in our jail, that's money that if we were making wiser choices in what we're pursuing and in how we're treating criminal activity, I think that that money could be used for schools, roads, all the other things that we like and enjoy. I also think that an important part of a district attorney's office is transparency to the public. One of the first things I would do as a reform would be to create a policy manual, because as far as we've been able to determine, none exists, and put it online for the public. I think that people deserve to know how the office is being run, what choices the office is making on their behalf, and they deserve to have a reason to hold that office accountable if they don't like what's going on. And that's something that's important to me as well.
Okay.
But I won't take up all the time. I'll let Mr. McKee respond.
So, same question.
Thank you. So, there's just a general lack of understanding, unfortunately, because, like I said, Mr. Wall has not practiced law in Washington County Circuit Court. He's had 2 trials there. When it comes to the programs that we have and the way that money is used, we have gotten $8 million the last few years for justice reinvestment. And what that has done is that has helped create a program for mothers and also a program called IRIS that allows people to avoid going to prison with more intensive probation supervision. And we've used that. Now, those are Department of Corrections beds that we're saving. Okay, those are prison beds. Those aren't jail beds that are being saved. And in fact, one of the results with placing more money in programs like IRIS and more defendants in programs like IRIS is, rather than them going to prison when there's a probation violation or where they're not doing everything they're supposed to do, they do use more jail beds as sanctions for that. But that is still saving ultimately those Department of Correction prison beds, which I think is very helpful. I was at the East County Democrats the other night with Mr. Wall, and he again talked about more forced releases this year than we had all of last year. He blamed that on the DA's office. And again, that's a lack of understanding of what is going on with the county and what we do with the remodel that's happening with the jail. I started in 1998, and we had the same jail in 1998 as we do in 2018. And at that time, we had a population of about 400,000. Now we have a population of about 600,000. We still have the same jail. And obviously, when one of the wings is closed down, there's going to be more forced releases, and that's unfortunate. But the sheriff is working hard to remodel and get that done so that the jail can get back to full capacity. But the drug court program that we have is a nationally recognized drug court program. And when we invest in people in Washington County's drug court program, which is a program that is co-run by the district attorney and the courts, those people have repaid an incredible amount of money in restitution, in the millions. Those people do not recidivate, meaning they don't go back to jail. They are truly rehabilitated and go back to the community. We do have a mental health court. Our office is a big part of that. We work with Washington County mental health counselors. We work with a specific judge, Judge Fund, and members of our office to make that work. And it can't happen without our office. We also are in the process of starting a veterans court. This started about a year ago with 3 veterans in the office who are working with a judge who's a veteran to get that up and running. It does take time, but that has already happened. And again, unfortunately, these are things that Mr. Wall doesn't know because he has not worked in our office. And I don't say this to be disrespectful or to hurt Mr. Wall. He applied twice to work in our office as an entry-level misdemeanor attorney and didn't make it past the screening interview. And it's a very competitive process. We have a lot of really, really good qualified attorneys there. But it is the second largest office in the state, and this job requires a serious candidate to run a law firm of that size to keep Washington County residents safe. And, you know, there was nobody that ever said he hadn't tried a jury trial. He hasn't tried a Measure 11 crime to a jury, and he's never had a murder trial.
Also incorrect.
Thank you.
If I could respond to that just
Yes.
for a moment. I've tried many Major 11 trials to juries. I did one in Washington County during the time that I've been practicing defense. So this again is untrue.
And murder trials?
I haven't tried a murder trial because in Polk County we're fortunate enough that we only had a couple during my 8 years there. And in each instance, the district attorney handled those.
Okay, well, we could steal a few more minutes if anyone else has a question.
Yes, sir.
Do either of you have information on your conviction rate?
Well, his conviction rate as a defense attorney has been outstanding. He almost always gets his clients convicted, but...
I thought he worked in Polk County as a district attorney.
Oh, I see, okay.
That's what I'm talking about. As district attorney, your percent of convictions of cases that actually went to trial, do you have any idea?
That's all a matter of public record, and we could get that for you, sir. But it's, I mean, I would think in most DA's office, if they're doing it right, it's going to be fairly high because you want to make sure you're charging the right people in the first place.
Right.
So,
You have
The hard part about that is that when a district attorney leaves the office, rather than end up with that person continuing to get repeated hearing notices, what happens is usually the case is then recoded or reassigned to the office. So as I was preparing to run, I attempted to see if I was able to ascertain that. And E-court is basically completely incorrect. So I did talk with my district attorney that I worked under the last one of 4. And he indicated that it would basically require hand culling about 8 years of records, and it's just something they're unable to do.
We heard about Mr. Barton's endorsements. Mr. Wall, could you share what endorsements you received?
Sure. So, well, my opponent started six months ago, and no one else was running against him. I actually started this about a month ago, and I have a lot of our legislators have been endorsing me, current and former, as well as executives. Former Governor Barbara Roberts was one of my first endorsers. I've also been endorsed by House and Senate Majority Leaders Jenny Burdick and Jennifer Williamson, State Senator Riley, our State Senator Elizabeth Steiner Hayward, Representative McLean, Representative Margaret Doherty, and the list continues to grow. And as I said before, I think that people are hungry to have this conversation about ways that we can do justice better and that we can reform our offices to be more effective and more cost efficient. And the more people I talk to, the more people are ready to have that conversation.
Great. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming.
Thank you for inviting us.
We need to follow both of you and educate ourselves so that we can vote intelligently remain. We're going to hear now from Becky Tymchuk, who is a Beaverton School District Board member. There's going to be a levy on the ballot. She's going to explain what it is and why they need it, and then we'll have time for a few questions. And at 8:45, or maybe 8:50, we'll see how.
I can talk very fast.
Okay.
I'm very good.
We're going to have a brief sort of exposure on the topic of whether we should work towards some sort of disaster plan.
Thank you so much for having me. I know you've been hearing a lot of wonderful speeches, and I think this is what's so great about living in Washington County is that we have a lot of passionate people, a lot of people who are committed to making our county the best it can be. And I've had the opportunity, as I've spent this month out campaigning for this local option, to hear a lot of good, passionate people, candidates running for office. The Beaverton School District is the only ballot measure that's in Beaverton, and it is the renewal of our local option levy. 5 years ago, we asked you, the Beaverton taxpayer, to vote for a local operating levy. Operating levy means it goes just toward the cost of what we're asking for. It's not a bond to build anything, which we also asked you for in 2014, and we thank you very much for your generosity that allowed us to build a brand new high school, a brand new elementary school, remodel a school from Vos Elementary. Now we're in the middle of Hazeldale. We still have William Walker and our Arts Academy to go with that bond money. But we still have a couple of years left on the bond. But our operating levy was passed 5 years ago to pay for 300 teaching positions. Because 5 years ago, our budget was in a position that we had to cut 600 teachers from our roles. And it meant if you had, any of you, did you live here 5 years ago? How many of you lived here? Did any of you have kids in the schools 5 years ago? Did any of you have grandkids in the schools 5 years ago? It meant that our classroom sizes were absolutely unmanageable. And our kids deserve better than that. They deserve better than that. They can't learn that environment. So we came to you, the taxpayer, to ask you for a $1.25 levy per thousand on your homes, and you agreed to that. Folks, this is an awful way to fund our schools, and I wish it did not have to be this way. I really do. What I am grateful for is to be on a school board where we have voters that they believe in the investment of education. They believe in the future of our students. These are our future taxpayers. These are our future employees. And so we have had the generosity of you, the taxpayer, and we thank you very much for that. But this levy is going to expire, and we're asking for it to be a total renewal. So all it would do is, it would not increase any tax rate. It would just make it go on again for another 5 years. So no increase in the tax rate, and it would go to exactly what it did 5 years ago, and that is to pay for 300 teaching positions. Those are teachers that it pays for at every single one of our 57 schools. So for any given elementary school, it pays for 3 to 5 teachers. We didn't have it, that means we'd have 3 to 5 less teachers, and it means we could have anywhere from 35 to 40 kids in an elementary class. Not acceptable. In our middle schools, it means it would be 8 to 10 teachers less, and in our high schools, it would mean 10 to 15 less teachers. So it involves every single one of our schools. It pays for 300 teachers, and the tax rate is the same. It's on this May's ballot. It's the only ballot measure on the Beaverton ballot that has a number to it. So you don't have to memorize any numbers here, but it is 34-284, and it's the Yes for Beaverton Schools campaign. And if you'd like more information, we have a frequently asked questions. We have more information of the details of funding in our schools. We received the Valley Times endorsement. We have the mayor's one of our co-chairs. We have all the elected officials. We have many numerous businesses that are behind it. And we're going to be doing canvassing and phoning, and we have a lot of grassroots support as well. So we're just asking you to be aware that it's on the ballot, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I know you have a lot of other important things to do. So I've got more information here, and you can also go to our website. So does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Yeah, so the levy just pays for people.
People.
Not facilities.
Not facilities, that's a
So
bond.
we won't do anything to alleviate the overcrowding that we've got at the norm.
It will not. If that is the money that we passed 4 years ago, it's gonna unfortunately continue to take more building. And we can't keep up, we can't buy the land, but in the last year, I've been on the school board 3 years, we are for the very first time now starting to see an evening out. We're not doing these increases of 2,000 kids a year or 3,000 kids a year. We're actually going down in elementary numbers, and we're going down mostly in Title I schools because of the affordability of housing here in Beaverton. So we're going down in that area, but we're increasing in high school. So that's why still we have Westview and Sunset, even with the boundary changes, even with building Mountainside, because more families are coming in because they want to be in Beaverton schools. But that's a very short time limit. You age out. So like I'm a family that lives here, but my kids have now graduated, but I still continue to live in the Beaverton School District. 75% of the people that live in Beaverton, and I mean all the unincorporated, because Beaverton, not just Beaverton City, 75% of the people that live in the Beaverton School District do not have children in our schools.
Right.
So that's why it is so important that we are good stewards of the money, and we make sure that our taxpayers know what their money is going toward. Any other questions?
The sensible boundary issue, I live in the Torrey View neighborhood, and my child's only 3 now, so I got a while to worry about it, but we were shocked to find out when this high school changed from Sunset to Beaverton. So when my child will be going to high school, he's going to have to cross a freeway essentially to get there versus coming just down Cornell.
I think by the time your child is, Cornell may be looking like a freeway. We are just seeing so much traffic on our roads here that things that used to we see as, I've lived here 40 years, things that we saw as natural boundaries, like 26 was a pretty good divider that divided us from south to north, and we can't look at Beaverton, and I know the commissioner here, we're going to have to reconfigure how we look at Beaverton, because the core, it used to be just Beaverton High School, and then everything kind of went to, now inside Beaverton is shrinking, and all of these outside areas are growing but our schools are still in this, so we can't always go to our close, we've been used to these really close feeder patterns. We walk to school in a lot of our areas. That's something we really, and we just have so many people that some schools are just bursting at the seams, and then we have some other schools that are just, so do we take kids from one end of our district and bus them to the other so that we have, because we have capacity in another area? Do we, there is no easy answer. So it's going to be interesting by the time your child is in high school. I don't even guess what our boundaries are going to look like. I really don't even guess. But I do see, like I said, that we're evening out with our growth. We're not seeing like the increases that we were seeing in the 80s and the 90s. We're definitely leveling out a little bit more. But it is an ever ongoing issue. And I wish there was an easy answer, but it means we have to keep communicating and keep working and keep, because we have capacity. We have capacity.
Doesn't feel like it here.
I know it doesn't.
Yeah.
You got to tell all these folks, you got to quit building all these beautiful homes and all this beautiful landscape up here.
Yeah.
So, I do have a question.
Yes.
What is it going to take to get Beaverton School District to actually respond to the county when land use applications come in? Because at this point, yes, you have space someplace else other than in the north, but you still continue to say you have capacity at the schools that are serving those sites.
And there's no, I wish I could tell, I will give you my personal answer, because I do not speak for the superintendent.
But you are.
I am an elected official on the board.
You
You're
set
right.
policy.
I sit on a seat, and I will tell you my personal opinion. I do not want Greg coming in and telling me how to run the school district, just like Greg doesn't want me coming in and telling him we're a partner. I don't want THPRD. I do not believe I have the role as a school board member to tell a developer who has bought that land, if they have gotten all their permits and they have been, for me to say, to sign off and say, nope, you can't. I would much rather try to fix it that, no, I know, you're saying that we...
No. All you need to do is communicate to the school district and, to communicate to the county to say, we don't have capacity. That doesn't mean that the application...
But do I know the people that are, do I know for a fact the people that are buying those homes have kids that are going to go to X, Y, or Z school? Do I know who's buying that home has a kid in school? Do I know that they have 5 in high school? Do I know? You're asking me as a school board member to say whoever that developer is building that house for, that he or she knows exactly who's going to buy it, and that they are going to, one, go to our schools, they may go to a private school, they may homeschool, I don't think I have that job to tell someone who buys a home in the school district.
So
that's my personal opinion.
Why do we pay for a demographer? Why do we as taxpayers pay for somebody to figure those numbers out?
Because we're having to change boundaries. We're having to look at and to change boundaries, because we're opening up a new middle school here, and we need to know what neighborhoods should go to that new middle school, and rather opening it already full, try to be in an area that there's allowing for room of growth. We have to have demographers to have at least some kind of idea of, we also need them for roads and bus patterns and all sorts of other things.
One of the reasons that the county will not, the Beaverton School District, instead of saying, yes, we can serve a new development, these are the service provider letter from the Payne property. The county changed the requirements so that Beaverton can just give some excuses and some plans rather than saying that they can serve the new students. And one of the reasons is that the state says that education is, what is it called?
Not an essential
Desire.
It's not an essential service, and it seems to me like working
No,
with
it
the
is
state.
essential, it's not critical.
Critical, okay. That we need to work with the state to change that, because the Beaverton School District can't change it, the county can't change it. The county has to follow the state rules about what is an essential service.
But Virginia, state law does allow for denial of land use application if there's not capacity.
Right,
But in other states, what I'm trying to see, in other states, if a developer comes in, they are responsible to work with those local governing bodies to put across so much land to then help build new schools. Not say, stop, no more, you can't come in, because we need to work with them, tell and say, quit offering jobs and that people want to live out by where their job is. We need to tell Nike, quit building new headquarters, out here. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch more than just the school district that has to say no. There are other, and then we also know, we say no, these kids are going to age out, so then we have these buildings, and then are we going to say to developers, oh, well, now we have room in certain schools,
so
go ahead and...
put a whole generation in trailers? Right now, we've got Cedar Mill Elementary at 104% of capacity. Cedar Park is 97%. And these are the schools that are going to serve 84 new houses. So
But ask those people, ask those parents that are there now, if we can move you to a place where we have room.
So the kids spend an hour and a half on the bus every day. I'm glad I don't have kids in school.
Fortunately, this isn't part of the levy.
I think
This isn't that conversation. No.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I think you have an attorney on staff, because you're getting into legal questions, and, I agree with your position completely, but...
They just asked me my personal opinion.
Oh,
and my
yeah.
personal opinion as being on a school board member, I think we all have a lane to be in, and my lane is, if you show up at our schools, you are owed an education. And I'm going to try to do the best. But I am hoping that there are other government entities, whether it be Washington County, or if you're in a city or unincorporated, that they can be the ones, but not just put it on the school district to tell developers that they can't build somewhere. And you asked me, that's just my own personal.
Well, and I think I'd like to have more of a conversation with you.
Yeah. So I always learn. I always learn from you. I always learn. Yes.
I'm one of the 75% whose kids are grown like yours, and I'm sure Mrs. Mansos, but I also represent a pretty big neighborhood, and we have a pretty tight group in the West Cape neighborhood, similar like that seeing their kids go from Sunset to Beaverton. And we're talking about developers that come in knowing the situation on the school, and we've also contrast that to the people that have already invested in. They've invested there because they've invested in these schools. It's part of their decisions. There's a lot more people in that basket than this redevelopment that we're getting, that you're looking out for those developers. And I have a hard time telling them when they say, how can we support a school club venture where we got slammed when we brought those issues up last go up.
Well, and you guys will have to show me some numbers, but I don't think there is anywhere where we were just making these decisions that we were just taking in absolute just new development. Because
well, there's a lot of unhappy people out there.
And you know what? There's going to be unhappy people to the end of time because
when
none of us want change and none of us want to move from the place that we're used to.
Our whole community West PD school, our whole chain got broken. The total thing got broken. All these people that invested in their homes, knowing one of their top priorities is schools. Was yours?
Absolutely.
And we're looking at a business that basically uses our neighborhood as their factory. They're putting a few homes here and there. They're not overbuilding. It's not more that's already there. When do we get that same respect then that we're getting the dollars?
I guess and again, this isn't probably the venue, but I guess what I'm missing the point of, do you think we're sending your kids to an inferior school, or are they getting a bad education, or what is it that happened?
Let me come up with a scenario. I just thought of it on the spur moment. If the rule was you're moving in a community and the school is full, we'll be happy to bus you to where we have an opening rather than moving that whole neighborhood. I mean, that just came off the spur of the moment, but there's an option. Why aren't we looking for options where we're protecting our investments in our neighborhoods?
I'm going to bust in
and I
there.
think that is again, communication that, and we're going to be continuing to have this education. So we've got a new middle school that will be opening here in a couple of years, just right up the street here. We're going to be looking at those configurations again. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to find as many people that are totally against having their kids be on a bus than the ones that are where they play their sports, or where they go to their dentist, or where they worship, or where we get used to we all look for our niche in our community. So get it. And again, I lived in South Beaverton where there was nothing, and everybody in the neighborhood went to Beaverton High School. And then, lo and behold, a Southbridge was built. And people grumbled, and that's not where we went, and my parents went to Beaverton, and that's not where, and we had to go through a 1.5-year long process, and people didn't like it, and their older siblings had gone to Beaverton, and they wore orange and black for youth sports. But guess what? You look around the neighborhood now, and none of those kids know about Beaverton, because it takes just 5 years, it takes just 10 years, that you build a whole other new tradition. And that's what that is what change is all about. And if you as a family, that is something that you totally value, I totally support you as a board member to do that. And if we have to do it through administrative transfer, or if someone has to even feel like, we have people that feel so strongly that they move. I mean, if that's where your passion actually goes, but change is going to happen. Just like to my Southridge community that just took the last 20 years, that we gave our money, we gave away. Now half of our community got split in half, and now they go to Mountainside. Change keeps happening. It just keeps happening. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember on this particular issue that if this levy doesn't pass, it isn't the school board, it isn't the people who are making the decisions about where to put schools that will suffer. It's the kids and the teachers that will suffer. This is a long conversation that we need to have. Maybe we can bring some folks back to CPO1 to have that conversation.
Or maybe bring you to us.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, but I just want to remind you that voting against this levy isn't going to build more schools. So
thank you very much for saying that, because that is what I'm here today. We need these teachers. These kids deserve these teachers, and we do not deserve classrooms with 30.
And I've heard a lot of people expressing their discontent with the school district for various things, and thinking they'll vote no on the levy. But I don't think that's.
I'm hoping you don't do that. Vote against me the next time I'm up in May for not doing my job or holding me accountable. Vote against, but don't take it out on the kids.
Okay.
Don't take it out. They didn't ask for any of this.
They can move to Portland. You suggested we just move if we don't like it.
No, I suggested if you don't like going to Beaverton, you could go someplace where you
are
can
grown. I'm just sharing to you.
I get it.
We have plenty of
door
issues,
after
and
door after
Becky,
door.
maybe you'll come
People
back
calling
again
me
when
because they
we
think we
have
can
a-
somehow make a difference.
And if I could tell you, we heard this conversation by the hour when we went through the boundary discussion, and we're gonna hear it again when we go through the middle school boundary, and we go through, and you are heard. You are heard, and if I could find a whole bunch of money in my pocket, I would build, schools, but then you wouldn't wanna move from West TV, you'd wanna still go to Sunset. So,
There's a lot of busing going on right now as we're redoing the schools that we're doing. We're transferring kids around wholesale busing.
yes.
So why don't we just bus people that are moving into these neighborhoods rather than forcing all the established neighborhoods to be pushed around?
Okay, point well
So,
taken, but thank you very much.
We have
Thank you.
another topic tonight
Thank you.
about whether CPO1 should spearhead an effort to create some sort of a community response plan for disaster planning. Now, I am not going to lead it. It's not my issue. Even if I did have time, I would. So if there are people that are interested in pursuing this idea, stand up now or come see us later.
And there's some great resources out there.
What?
Great resources.
Yeah, there's
Great resources.
There's a kit you can get that will give you all the basic steps for you to take to a small neighborhood.
A kit that someone can get.
Yes, someone can get it.
No, it's Map My Neighborhood.
Yeah, map your neighborhood. There's all sorts of things. So is there anybody here tonight that would want to be involved in an effort to bring more disaster planning to CPO1? I'll run an article in next month. Bruce? Fabulous! All right. I'll put an article in next month's paper and I'll try to start recruiting people.
But Bruce is not going to do it all by himself.
He certainly can't.
Part of these mapping your neighborhoods, remember you have to be within walking distance. You need to be in walking distance of your neighbors. In other words...
So wait a minute, who are you?
What?
Who are you?
Greg Malinowski, I'm your county commissioner. Up for re-election, maybe. You want communities, you want like a cul-de-sac or something small like that, because no one's going to be walking very far.
Right.
If you get 1,000 feet, that's a long way from home, because you're going to have to hoof it on back there. And the reason we want to do this is because we believe, according to the statistics and other terrible things that have happened, it's going to be 72 to 96 hours before the firemen and police come back to work. So first of all, you're on your own the first 3 or 4 days. And secondly, the people who hand out water and supplies said they're going to be busy at the coast, possibly as long as 6 weeks. I don't know if any of you saw the collapse of the bridge. Yes, ma'am?
I was just going to add to, we talk about, how it could be 72 hours before people get to you. And my response to that is always, and at that 72-hour mark, how are they going to get to you?
Yeah.
Because, our roads, and not just in Washington County, roads throughout Oregon, are not all seismically developed. And I would also like to add that in my personal opinion, this is me as a resident talking, I'm from Wisconsin, I look at these elevations and I see the earthquake maps. I don't care how seismic they tell me those roads are, I don't believe it. I just don't. I mean, we can do everything to standard and then double those standards and I'm still not going to believe those roads are so. But to your point, I think this is a great effort. I'm a resident of CPO1, by the way, in case anybody cares, so I'm not just spouting off. Greg's right. You can't. I don't think it's practical to do a map your neighborhood on a CPO level. It needs to be more of a homeowners association
level. But the CPO can
level.
facilitate the neighborhoods to get busy doing it. Right.
So there'll have to be, neighborhood leaders by the block almost. So.
Right. And can the county give us some support on all of that?
I doubt it. Only from a financial standpoint. And the other thing I can tell you is that wouldn't be. I mean, when you're talking about neighborhood preparedness, that wouldn't be an LUT thing, so I couldn't speak to that anyway.
Yeah,
honestly, what you need to encourage most of all is, the neighborhood thing is great, But if individuals don't have their own supplies and
Well,
plan as well,
It
that's
occurs
not
to
a
me that
comfort.
the county has information that
Oh, we
would be
do.
valuable to people who wanted to contact their neighbors and map their neighborhood and stuff.
Honestly,
So-
one of the best resources is the Red Cross has 20 days to disaster preparedness or something
Right,
like
but-
that. That's for individuals.
Well, Melissa, what I'm thinking is like, if a person said, I'd like to map my neighborhood, maybe the county could do a mailing to that person's 1,000-feet radius or something.
These are gonna be people you know, so you might as well go ring the doorbell, and if they say, no, I'm not interested in surviving this earthquake, you can put a red X on the door and go on to the next house.
But these days, who has time to go knock on all the doors except the candidates?
Well, what I'm saying is you need to know these people, you better trust these people.
Well, that's true, but, you know,
You
getting them
need
to
a
the meeting is
relationship.
part of it. So it's a thought.
And I'm not sure which department would handle that, to be honest with you. Like, maybe Health and Human Services would be your best bet to contact.
Well, I just think,
The
yeah,
CPO
Health and Human
has
Services, but, you know,
connections.
when a developer wants to develop something, the county gives them a list of all the people they have to notify. And so
We could ask,
it was
if you wanted to do
that
that.
connection that I
But
was thinking.
I would go by elevation and some other
Yeah.
issues, you know, if you can't walk there before the earthquake, don't plan on connecting with that neighborhood
Yeah,
after.
exactly. So.
I was
okay.
surprised, I saw a drawing of Highway 26. Not only did most of the overpasses come down, but the parts of 26 that were built on fill went down too. And so you're talking like, you're gonna have 8 breaks between Cornelius Pass and Cedar Hills Boulevard. And it's not, you know, you might as well give up on fixing
You're gonna have to
that.
start raising horses?
Well, just important. And for those of us who are older and on sensitive drugs, like we gotta have them to live, do what you can to stockpile a little early. Because you'll probably be without drugs 4 to 6 weeks. And so if it's the kind of pill you gotta take to make it to the weekend, you don't wanna run out of those, because, you know, we'll all go back to our natural state. So keep that in mind.